Okay, so I suggest we start. So good morning again, good afternoon for those who are on this side. Welcome to the Electrifying Africa, delivering on Mission 300 faster together. It will be a discussion around the SRMI initiative program, and then what are the results so far, and what are the next steps. So very happy to see a good crowd already of very familiar faces. I'm Frédéric Verdol, lead energy specialist based in Dakar. We will have a presentation on basically what are the key features of the initiative, where it is deployed right now, how is it going, and then we will open to the discussion. So I will, for housekeeping, I will ask you two things. To please keep your mics muted while colleagues are making the presentation, and then during the Q&A, of course, please chip in if you have questions. And about questions, if you have a burning question or ongoing question, please post them in the Q&A section. I think it's at the bottom here. Yeah, and then we will address them during the Q&A session. So I think that what we will do, without further ado, is to have some introductory words from our manager, ESMAP manager Fanny Misfeldringus. And then after that, we will have a presentation from the two SRMI colleagues, Huang Nguyen and Sabine Cornietti. So over to you, Fanny.
Thank you so much, Frédéric. I hope everyone can hear me. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome from me. My name is Fanny Misfeldringus, and I, jointly with my colleague Chandra Govindarajulu, manage the Energy Sector Management Program, Assistance Program, ESMAP, here at the World Bank Group. I want to welcome you to the session, which is on electrifying Africa, delivering on the Mission 300 faster together. It's really a pleasure to have you all with us. Today's discussion focuses on one of the most critical questions at the heart of the Mission 300 agenda. How do we really mobilize the private capital at scale and at speed to expand renewable energy infrastructure across Africa? And that's, of course, important because as we're extending the grid, we do need the electricity to, supply through the grid. We are seeing at the moment a real momentum, and the momentum is being created by those African states that have already created or established and committed to a national energy compacts. But ambition alone, as reflected in those compacts, is not enough. It must be matched with bankable projects, credible procurement processes, and the right risk mitigation tools to give investors confidence. This is precisely where the SRMI initiative that's part of ESMAP comes from. It was designed to go beyond traditional instruments by tackling the specific, often country-level risks that keep private investors on the sidelines. In doing so, it helps turn ambition into implementation. The results speak for themselves. More than 40 renewable energy tenders, a pipeline exceeding 20 gigawatts, and 1.35 billion in climate financing mobilized. Most importantly, these efforts are translating into projects reaching financial close. Let me give you a few specific examples. In Liberia, SRMI is supporting the country's first ever public-private partnership with solar battery storage project, which would represent 30% of the country's total generation, with prices around 8 to 9 cents per kilowatt hour. It would displace HFO at 25 cents per kilowatt hour, representing highly cost-effective power generation. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, the Moi Metrogrids project is planning to bring a 20-year concession to connect 1 million people to affordable energy. In Ethiopia, a foreign exchange liquidity support mechanism is enabling 225 megawatt solar tender to move forward with confidence in currency stability, one of the critical issues when we're preparing these kinds of projects. Today, we are fortunate to hear from colleagues who have been at the forefront of this work. Sabine Cornietti, Huang Nguyen, and the broader SRMI team. I encourage you to listen closely, engage actively, and think about how the lessons shared can be applied in your own country context, and how we can help you in your own country context. So please reach out to us. With that, let me hand over to our presenters. I want to thank you, and also thank you, Frédéric, for ushering us through this session. Thank you.
Thanks
I want to
very much,
confirm if
Fanny.
you can see
Over
my
to you.
screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you put it in presenter mode?
There you go.
Great. Thank you, Fanny, for the opening remark, and Fred for introducing us. So we are presenting today how we as a team has worked for many years now to try to help countries all over the world, and especially in this case, Sub-Saharan Africa, to bring in private investment in renewables. Building on many lessons learned and with a team of colleagues, we have developed a standardized and scalable approach to bring in private investments. It starts with understanding what are the risks that developers see in these markets, which are often the most challenging, not just in terms of private investment, but also development, infrastructure gaps. So this entails supporting upstream support to improving the regulatory and enabling environment, supporting them in either updating or creating a least cost generation plan to understand and identify what are the amount of renewable that's needed in their grid, given the state of their grid, where is it needed, how is it needed, and then also identify where in the grid would be needed to be strengthened so that renewable energy project can be incorporated in a safe, reliable, and efficient manner. And that's reflected in having a robust procurement approach. And this could entail strategizing with our client countries and colleagues in undertaking whether it would be a substation-based or solar park approach that would allow for investors to understand the rule of what they need to do, whether they need to bring the land or not, whether that would be the role of the government. So these are upstream planning and strategy work that we do side by side along with our country teams and their clients to have a plan for attracting private investments. And in doing so, we are also bringing in climate finance in order to co-finance the grid reinforcement work. That also brings me to the second part of the work, which is the downstream investment, downstream support, which has to do with supporting to prepare a bankable project, not only where it is on the grid, but also an efficient risk allocation. We have learned from the past that even though solar prices have gone down significantly globally, many of the developers are still, and lenders are still hesitant to go into some of these markets because of the risks related to creditworthiness of the off-taker, the utility companies, or legal gaps, or the capacity of the government counterparts to design and implement tenders, as well as grid interconnection and land availability risks. So all of these risks are being reviewed, and we support our clients in understanding the most efficient party to take this risk. And the next step is to have a plan to mitigate the residual risks. So whether it be the creditworthiness of the utility, the ability for them to pay the independent power producer on time and in full, or it is the availability of foreign exchange in the country. So all of these together had allowed us to have a standardized approach. We have been able to support 40 renewable energy tenders, as Fanny mentioned. We have also supported an update or creation of about 40 least cost generation expansion plan, which allow for all of this work to happen. The identification of renewable on the grid that's needed have also aggregated to about 20 gigawatt of the solar tenders that are being supported, and billions in private capital is being crowded in. And we have not done this alone. We have partnered with many of the key institutions that are active in this space, and that includes the African Development Bank, IRENA, EBRD, the International Solar Alliance, ADB, AFDB, Sustainable Energy for All, and GIZ Gas Transform. These really are the core team that have been driving the fine-tuning of this approach, but also to adopt this in the client countries that they are involved with. It's really a team effort among the MDBs and development partners. And as the result, we have also been able to fundraise 1.35 billion in climate finance to co-finance the grid reinforcement part that would be could be covered by the MDBs, but also innovatively structuring risk mitigation instruments and facility to cover the risks so that we can have bankable project pipelines. And the risk mitigation instruments that we have worked with included liquidity revolving fund, first loss, FX instrument, demand risk guarantee, and we can go into the details in some of these instruments later on in the presentation. Let me, on this part, hand over to Sabine.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So as Huong presented, we have a greater mandate on trying to push for least cost, affordable, sustainable generation across all our client countries. But we have a particular soft spot for the M300. We're working very closely with most of the countries that have compacts. And we wanted with this presentation to show you under the 5 key pillars you have what we are doing under SRMI. So the 4 buckets that Huong just presented, and show you really in detail what we do and have an example attached to it. We try to find some of the most iconic examples. Of course, some of them actually cross different pillars, but don't hesitate if you do have questions after on what we've done. So the first pillar is the most important one, probably, is really expanding the energy infrastructure at competitive cost. And on that, as Huong mentioned, the first thing we really work on is the enabling environment. So upstream TA, where we're working very closely with the planning team within ESMAP and the Knowledge Bank. We're funding a lot of these as well to have consultants, firms doing the work. And it's not just on generation planning. We feel very strongly about the need to do it in parallel to VR integration analysis, dispatch analysis to ensure reliability. So really having the right basis from a technical standpoint to be able to expand the infrastructure where it's needed and when it's needed. And that, exactly as Frank said, blending it with climate finance, so actually have the financing available. And it's not necessarily to reduce cost for the IDA countries that are under M300. It's about trying to free some of your IDA allocation to be used on other things, such as health, education, resilience, etc., like other things that are very important for your governments. Because the problem with infrastructure is that it's capex intensive, and hence you do need to find a way to have as much as possible public investment where it makes sense. But sometimes we really we can't actually do without public investments, and that's in particular for all the grid reinforcement and like the interconnection, etc. You know, we're trying to move into transmission lines that are financed by the private investors and managed by them, but this is still quite a niche market. So we are trying to find a way to reduce the cost for countries by bringing CTF and GCF. And I think a good example of that is Guinea-Bissau. It's small amounts, but it is an extremely important project, I think, for the Bissau government. Around 50 million of IDA investment, of which 13.5 was coming from the GCF that we fundraised. It's a loan plus a guarantee, and the technical assistance part under recipient executed was almost 3 million from ESMAP. And the real aim for Bissau was to move away from having an extremely expensive cow power, thanks to the interconnection from on the OMVG. They've been able to get imports from the neighboring countries, but right now they don't have enough power domestically, as in they actually have no domestic generation. And so that's why we're supporting them in expanding their solar generation, solar and BESS. We're financing the electrification, upgrades on the grid, which would increase reliability, BESS for grid support as well. And now we're about to launch, the government is about to launch, I should say, sorry, a 40 megawatt project with 40 megawatt hours of BESS, which would represent a major shift for the country. So next one is on the second pillar, which is about fostering greater private participation. And as I mentioned, this is really the way we're seeing it under SRMI on reducing cost. So switching from CapEx only to becoming OpEx for the utilities. But we need to do it in the right way. So if you end up signing up a PPA for 25 years at 20 cents per kilowatt hour, this is not the right way to get private sector. It's good to have private sector, but if it's too expensive, it is actually going in the wrong direction. So as Wong said, a key part that we work on is really the transaction work. And here we're working very closely with our IFC colleagues that have under the transaction advisory team the scaling program. So we, in some cases, do a bit of half-half, or we do fully with scaling. But in any case, we work very closely together depending on what governments prefer. And we help finance through grants, transaction advisors, all the preparatory analysis for the site, so if it's a solar park, for example, and what we call innovative risk mitigation coverage. So we work on leveraging climate finance to cover all the risk that are perceived by IPPs that are blocking them from reaching financial close. And I think the best example for that is Ethiopia, which had unfortunately a few failed negotiated deals, tendered or not, with IPPs. The main constraint they've been facing was on foreign exchange. The government was not willing to take that risk. IPPs were not willing to take that risk, and hence the deals never closed. So the government, with the IFC and the World Bank, has been working on a new tender that has just been launched now 2 months ago, and it has an innovative foreign exchange liquidity facility, the FLSM, which is funded by over $20 million of GCF funding, where we're structuring 2 accounts, one in dollar, one in local currency, allowing for a buffer of 6 months of availability of dollars. Because the real risk in Ethiopia is not necessarily a regulatory risk, it's really about the availability of dollars in the country. And so we're really hoping, and of course we never know, but we're really hoping that with that, they will be able to reach financial close for the first ever IPP projects in the country for 225 megawatts of solar. And the third pillar that we're supporting is to leverage the benefits of regional power integration. I think under M300, most of the countries are definitely connected to a regional line. We ourselves are working very closely with quite a few on the CLSG and the OMVG in particular. We do work again on two different aspects under SRMI. One would be related to regional master plans. We work very closely, for example, on the WAP master plan, funding some of the consultants. And the second one is on the work of developing those regional power plants that have been identified under the different master plans, such as the one in Gambia, Burkina, Mali, Niger, Cote d'Ivoire. A lot of them have had a footprint of SRMI for supporting the development of those power plants. And I think one iconic example for us is really Gambia, the first one to come out. It's at award stage. It's a 50 megawatt solar with 40 megawatt hours of battery storage. The first real IPP project also tendered in Gambia. And it will connect at the OMVG, allowing Gambia to not only be, importing power from the regional grid, but also exporting power. So what we aim to do is also trying to change a little bit, helping change with these power plants, the dynamic within the market, because currently you only have a few countries that are exporting and a lot that are actually getting the imports. And it's important for us to also help the development of domestic generation, such as in small countries like in Liberia, in Gambia, in Bissau, where solar can make a huge difference in their energy mix.
And the fourth pillar of the Mission 300 is to strengthen the capacity and creditworthiness of the utilities. SRMI has been helping governments in achieving this through improving the reliability on the grid with grid reinforcement, but also reduction in cost of generation for utilities. A beautiful example of this is Liberia. Many of us would remember 10, 15 years ago, they are freshly coming out of a civil war. They are really in a desperate place. But with political will, they have decided to strengthen the performance of the utility. IDA comes in with an MPA. The first one reducing losses through introducing meters, and they have been able to reduce loss significantly. This is being followed by the second project in the multi-phase programmatic approach, which is a series of financing that the bank is implementing as an instrument, as a side note. That second project is reinforcing the grids. And so this is creating a condition for them to show to the developers that there is a utility that they can work with. And there's lower loss, greater revenues coming into the system, thereby allowing them to not only cover capex, but also OpEx, but also capex. Still going forward, they have two options. One is to raise tariff to continue to cover capex, or they can reduce generation cost. And this is where we come in. The renewable energy agenda in the country is supported at the highest level. The president wants a solar project to complement hydro that they were developing already. And our support to them, including in the form of 2 million grant from recipient executed from the ESMAP SRMI program for transaction advisory is really helping to prepare the 2 solar parks that we are supporting them on, to allow for bankability for these projects, and to have the private sector comes in. So these are 2 sites, Yegepa and Buchanan, each so a total of 200 megawatt peak of solar and 200 megawatt hour of base, so 100 for each. This is the first IPP in the country, and they are expected to reach the cost 9 cents per kilowatt hour. As Fanny said, this is displacing really expensive HFO that they have been having rely on. So in the future, the Liberian grid could be expected to rely on hydro and solar, and increasingly rely less on HFOs. And this is incredibly important, especially in this environment where access to fuel is increasingly very volatile. But even more importantly, this is reducing the system costs, the generation costs, and the overall system costs to the utility, allowing them to improve their creditworthiness even more, to be in better position to achieve financial viability for the sector. And the 5th and last pillar of the energy compact is embracing distributed renewable energy. And we also have a beautiful example from the DRC. In the DRC, most of the development in the country is concentrated in the south, in the corridor. But the government has also made it a point to develop the northern region. And this is where we have provided GridWorks, which won the tender for 3 metro grids in the north of the country to provide electricity access through metro grid to 1.4 million people. So 220,000 customers to be connected, in mostly household, but also some industrial type of consumer. What we are doing to help the government of the DRC is to bring in GCF reimbursable grants to be structured as the demand risk guarantee. So in the beginning of the project, there would be uncertainty in terms of demand, and to allow for the project to be developed and mitigate the demand risk, we have structured this guarantee so that GridWorks can develop the project and have the confidence that it would have a greater chance of success. This project has a capex of about 220 million and an opex later on over the course of 20 years of operation of about 280 million. So making it total of 500 million that would be catalyzed through the use of this demand risk instrument. So this is one of the most innovative instruments that we have supported in SRMI. If it's proven to be successful, we would be able to take this model to other parts of the DRC or other parts of Africa. The project is completely project financed. We from SRMI are also providing them with a small grant to finance the independent verification agent to support this demand risk instrument guarantee implementation. So I think this is the end of our presentation, but we look forward to any questions that you may have. And I hand it back to Fred.
Thank you very much, Wang and Sabine. So very good presentation, and nice to see the progress done already by SRMI. I note the integrated approach, very important. You mentioned a couple of times that SRMI is helping to show where in the grid the project should be. Maybe we'll talk on this. While waiting for presentations for questions to come in, I think I have many questions. So if there is none, definitely I can kickstart. Um, Maybe one thing
I
that
see Matar has a hand up, Fred.
oh, there are some hands, so I don't see them. Okay. Don't see the hands. Okay, so Matar,
Hi,
please
Fred.
go ahead.
Okay, I'll come in. Thanks a lot, friend. Thanks to the SRMI team as well. And for the shameless plug to the Gambia. Yes, we're hoping to get there very soon, Sabine. I mean, just quickly. I mean, the support has been consistent and dedicated. I mean, we've gone through so many hoops over the last 3 years. We're getting there eventually. But I mean, as you went through your presentation, I was looking at other things that probably we could have also leveraged on. Particularly one, I mean, the key bankability issue was really related to guarantees. Eventually, I mean, on the Gambia transaction, we had to pivot and almost use IDA funds as a guarantee instrument. But it seems, I mean, things have evolved significantly since then. Unfortunately, I mean, internally, we still can't fully leverage on our internal instruments, particularly the PRG, so which was really something that warranted a pivot. But I mean, I was also looking at the support to Ethiopia, particularly in terms of foreign exchange support, right, and across the board. This is something we're facing in Gambia as well, where the utility has a lot of liquidity now in Gambian dollars, but the convertibility issue is now problematic, and they're not able sometimes to honor some of these invoices that come up. So I mean, can you, if possible, if you can just kindly elaborate on the structure of this, I mean, in more detail, and I mean how potentially, I mean, it can be accessed at the utility level as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madame. Maybe I'll take that one. So just maybe one point on the guarantee you got, and I think this is an important aspect to mention. Over the course of the past 5 years since COVID hit, a lot happened in the guarantee space for liquidity. The availability of PRGs, so the partial risk guarantee that I think has a new name now. I think it's liquidity guarantee, it's called, I think. Under IDA or IBRD balance sheet has been more difficult to access, mostly due to letter of credits, which is part of the structure of those guarantees. And those LCs have been less and less available for smaller projects. And the great thing about renewables is that prices have gone down drastically. So if you do a 50 megawatt project without battery, you'll be at a few cents, and that means 6 months of payment is a few million. And finding a bank, an international bank that is willing to do a long-term letter of credit at a cheap price for 20 years for $4 million, $5 million today is impossible to find. And actually, we're just working on that in Liberia. We contacted maybe 7 firms, 7 different banks, and none of them were willing to provide an LC. So I think that there has been a shift in the guarantees being available in the market because of COVID, because of everything that has happened, guarantees getting called, LCs getting called, and hence this shift has meant that we needed to find solutions. And unfortunately for Meta and the Gambians is that when all that was happening, we were developing the tender, and we had to find a solution. And the only solution that we found fast enough to be able to launch without delays the RFP was an IDA-funded escrow, which is considered bankable by the lenders that we spoke to. The problem is that it's using and blocking IDA funding. So for the new tenders we're working on, we're very much pushing the climate financiers. We're also a little bit changing their own strategy. So that's also the issue that we're facing with the CTF, is that it's a more risk credit-based approach. So we need to have a good ratio between IDA and IBRD countries, but we're really much trying to push for the CTF to give us liquidity funding and do direct guarantee. So it's a guarantee style like a PRG, but it doesn't require an LC. So sorry, it's a lot of details, but just to say that this is an evolving market that SRMI is very much working on, and a big shout out on the MIGA colleagues that have worked with us for years on that, trying to find solutions, and I think we're very close to have something that works with the CTF. And just to your point on Ethiopia, so we are able to get quite a bit of climate finance in general for SRMI. We've been very successful. And this risk on foreign exchange in Ethiopia was really led to, I think, 4 projects getting cancelled, not happen. And there's the IMF and the World Bank working very hard on trying to improve the foreign exchange situation in the country. But we can't wait for all the macroeconomics to be perfect to be able to launch a tender. Otherwise, in most countries, we'll just be stuck and never actually move forward with IPPs. So this was the only thing that was needed to actually move the needle further on those tenders being able to become bankable. I think that the key question, Mata, is can we reach financial close with the situation in Gambia without this additional support on because it is costly in the end to have, in our case, almost 30 million in an account for 25 years. So I think foreign exchange is something that we need to look very closely at. On the availability, it's really much more a macro fiscal problem than an energy sector problem. In the event where you have problems with transferability or convertibility, these are legislation issues, which you can get a PRI on, a political risk insurance for. But I think the key for us is if you want to remove the foreign exchange risk, the only thing you do is to have cash flows between your PPA payments to the reimbursement of the debt in the same currency. And that means you need to have local currency all the way. And so I think the problem with the Gambia is that it's not in the CFA zone, but that's something we've been thinking of for CFA, which has a quite large market, is why should we not try to push for some sort of level of CFA indexation, only a little bit on dollars, and push for having some project finance CFA debt, and have only partial indexation like that, and trying to move them away from a euro or dollar-based PPA. It was a bit of a long answer.
Thanks, Anna. No, but very useful. Yes, I see Jan's hand.
Sorry, technical issues. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, and maybe we can take a couple of questions so that we can pack them. Jan, over to you.
Sabine, you guys talked a lot about risk mitigation, and I'm really happy to see a lot of innovation also in the access space, especially in the DRC metro grids. But when it comes to IPPs, I mean, sometimes one of the best risk mitigation strategies is to diversify the off-taker risk, right? And since now most of the countries are connected to the WAP, I was wondering what SRMI is doing to facilitate also export, right? Especially for large parks like Liberia. We used to have this wonderful LERD facility that unfortunately never saw the light of day. But I was just wondering if SRMI is picking us up again, because this could be a real game changer to really think big, especially in countries like Liberia, where the solar park you're proposing is effectively doubling the national generation capacity. Thanks.
So you want to take more questions?
Well, there's no other, so please go ahead on this one.
I saw one in the chat. Oh, I just saw 2.
Yes, how can SRMI provide support to small countries with limited markets such as Comoros? And it comes to a broader question that I had, I didn't see it in the slides, is on the criteria for SRMI to support countries. And as these criteria evolve along the life of SRMI. Over.
Huong, you want to take these two, and I'll take Jan's question?
I can take the question in terms of the criteria for supporting. We're generally trying to support countries that are either on the verge of, or they're thinking about doing a renewable energy tender, or they're not yet convinced. And we want to be able to outline to them all the benefits that this would bring for them in the short, medium, and long term, and what are the steps. And what we do, especially since this was not highlighted, but a very key part of what we do is to facilitate peer-to-peer learning. We have organized 2 academies for sub-Saharan African countries, 1 cohort for Anglophone and the second cohort for the Francophone countries. And here we bring them to the first one in South Africa and the second one in Morocco, really using the local experience of these 2 respective countries in doing renewable energy tenders, so that governments can learn from their peer, understand what doing a tenders entail, what are some of the opportunities and pitfalls in carrying out tenders, even bad experience in doing tenders, so that they can understand that they can do this as long as there's political will and there's sort of organization and coordination mechanism among the key stakeholders in the country. So these are the countries that we're targeting, and so far there has been really good feedback from these academies for our client countries. Liberia came to the first academy in Anglophone, and they're really moving along on the tender side. So and I think the second, generally what we don't talk about is basically the fact that countries that could not get helped otherwise, and has been having really difficulty attracting private investment. So we really want to target countries that really need it, or on the fence and need a little nudge from their peers.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would just want to add, we're not a magic wand. Like, it's not, if we come into a country, indeed, because they ask for it, we're literally saying no to no one. We're a little bit stretched on the team, but any new country coming to us is a victory for us, because that means it's interest, and that means we can try to help. We really have tailored support for each, where they are and what they need. But it's not because we're starting the process that in 1 year you'll have a solar project that 2 cents. And I think this is something which is quite important for our colleagues and clients to really understand this. The prices we hear in the press are usually prices that are a little bit, subsidized or helped or took years, or the market size is completely different. So I see there's a question on Comoros. Of course, we can support Comoros, and actually Comoros colleagues are part of the academy in the Francophone one. And there's a bit of funding that we provided through a recipient executed fund. But the size of the Comoros grid is so much smaller than, for example, in Tunisia, where we work and we do gigawatts, that the prices are not going to be the same. And I think this is something that we really need to remind ourselves sometimes, and also just it takes hectares and hectares to develop a project, and we need to follow some environmental and social standards, and that does take you on average a year to prepare a site after you have hired the consultant. So it's just, this is so important that it's part of a plan because of all of that, and that it's a long-term plan. It's not a one-off. It needs to be thought through and developed, and through that, and for the countries we've been supporting, knowing that SRMI was set up around 8 years ago, some of them are finally reaching the point where they're CODing on their projects and seeing real change, and a systemic change, not just a one-off change. And related to Jan's question, which I think is an excellent one, we've been thinking about the market, and I think that's the beauty of ESMAP, is that we have colleagues in Marcotte and in Fanny's team that we work with very closely on developing the infrastructure, on the grid, the market of exchange. We've been in a situation where, as of now, 100% of the projects are sized for the local demand. So none of them need to be sold to become bankable. It's more the second phase of some of them, especially in the WAP, once the market of the WAP has developed a bit further, that we would be seeing more projects that would be aimed at some exchanges. I think the reality of a structure that includes multiple PPAs, such as the one we have for the hydros like Manantali, this is highly complex because you need to have 3 different guarantees for 3 different off-takers. And I think so for the WAP, we may be not ready. The SAP is a different story because you do have a day-ahead market. I think the main issue we're facing in the SAP is the fact that it's changing a lot because of the hydro project that may or may not happen. And so the risk perception of the day-ahead market for a project that is a 25 years project, you may not want to take the market risk. Outside of M300, we're working on other jurisdictions. I'm thinking here about, for example, the Philippines, which has a real market, and that has actually screwed in a certain way the whole PPAs on for the tenders that they had with prices that are a bit higher, but also because there's quite a bit of bilateral negotiations and market base. So we're also learning from that and seeing how to include it.
Thanks, Sabine. And then to complement this, well, on the solar side, of course, it's much more modular. But when it comes to assets that are basically too large for the domestic demand, I'm thinking of, there was a huge project of pump hydro in Lesotho that was 10 times the local demand. So it's all about risk and risk mitigation for export and regional trade. So those, yes, there is certainly some ways for us to support, but definitely it's a tricky one. Coming on while waiting for the next question, coming on your point on timeline, Sabine, and the fact that yes, it does not take 1 year from the request to get things to tender. What are the lessons or the different things that you're doing differently? I don't know, with the planning team in ESMAP or with other colleagues doing battery storage mapping or doing grid studies. How can we proactively put bricks together so that when the request comes, let's say we have more readiness to move ahead? Over.
I can try to take a stab, and then Sabine can complement. So the general timeline we have in our mind is that it varies a lot by countries, but takes about a year to do all the preparatory work with the network assessment, substation, ENS studies, if you do solar park, land-related analysis, and then another year to hire and have the transaction advisor do their work needed, including potentially legal gap analysis, preparing the tender documents and helping the client with the negotiation. This is quite conservative. And then after that, you have financial close, and then you need a year and a half, maybe 2 years, depending on the site and the location, to have the project developed. So you're looking at 3 to 4 years to have these all together. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, we have supported around 40 countries, many countries in Africa with the least cost generation plan, VR integration plan, network analysis. So there's some basis to work with in the countries already. And if that has been done some years ago, there was some momentum lost, either because of election or otherwise. The government now comes back, we pick up where we left, and something may needs to be updated. But we have a planning team mostly concentrated in Paris, that would be able to look at any gap that would be needed to be filled. And we have standardized TORs for any of the services that need to be filled by consultants or transaction advisors, depending on their level of support to the government or what the government needs. And at the right time, having them be tendered out and underway, some of which can be done under bank executed, most will have to be done under recipient executed. So the latter part would complicate the timeline a little bit, because usually this would have to be tagged with a bank lending operation, which I think we're also doing quite well because we're doing work in most of these countries. So these are the timeline that we need to think about as we strategize with the government, the upstream considerations in terms of where the projects will be, the tender approach and strategy, to advising them on even managing the transaction advisors so that they get the best arrangement that they can. And we're really here acting as an honest broker to make sure that the government is in a good position going to these tenders, fully understanding the risks and the necessary risk allocation arrangements. So giving them all the tools that they need to have and implement successful tenders.
Yeah, and just maybe one point, like we need to not wait for everything to be perfect. Like for example, on the planning side, this is an extremely important piece. But we've worked like on so many deals where we worked with the EPM planning folks, with the government, did some quick and dirty analysis of what good sizing is a good sizing. But you know, if we were to wait every time the full least cost generation plan conducted with a master plan and whatnot, you take a year and a half. So not having any basis, mathematical basis, real plan for your tender, that's a big fat no. But you don't need to go through the full least cost plan process to have something strong enough to be able to launch a tender. And like one thing is that you have a lot of bilateral deals being discussed at any point in time. Our clients are submerged by people knocking on the doors every day saying, do you want to sign an MOU? Do you want to sign a PPA and whatnot? And then after that, they come back to us and say, can you give us a guarantee for it? And this is, I think, the core is to have a champion in the government who's able to find the strength to say, we need to stop these guys for 5 minutes. We need to think, what do we want to do? How to organize it, and not an organized tender where we know we have space on the grid, how much power we really need, and at a price which is affordable for us. And for that, we have multiple ways. You know, we can bundle all those bilateral deals have been discussed into one tender, which is what we were discussing, for example, in Kenya, or other countries where they have already a few developers in place. So then, like in Zimbabwe, where you can have just those that have already a site very well developed included into the tender. You know, things like that, or even a Swiss challenge, but things to try to make a pipeline cleaned to then move into your tender and having something which is a little bit more organized and better prepared. But that also helps with reducing the timeline. But we do a lot of things in-house, to be honest.
Yes, so definitely taking time on preparation is helping to have a good project. I wish we had an analytical piece showing that actually negotiating deals are not necessarily faster. Being in Dakar, well, Ian, you will confirm, but being in Dakar with deals that have been since pre-COVID and not yet completed, I can confirm that. And then definitely the bank also with SRMI is playing at full its convening role. And then talking about that, the convening role, and then the fact that that SRMI is a bank initiative. How successful have you been in crowding in other sources of funding, either for an ad hoc project or more broadly, in a given country, from other DFIs or from philanthropy or from others. Is it something that is SRMI a label that is attracting other donors?
So we're supporting this at two levels. One is through ESMAP. We have been able to attract a lot of grants to support bank executed or recipient executed for a lot of the preparatory work that we've just covered. The second level of this is to go to GCF and CTF, to go to CTF and say, we have a pipeline of projects, but it has to be it has to be complemented by reinforcement on the grid so that grid interconnection does not become an issue. Under SRMI climate finance part, we have been able to access a program of investments for mostly IBRD countries, on the premise that they have to, the projects have to be able to demonstrate that it will leverage renewable energy integration, reliability of the grid, and a certain amount of private capital crowded in as a result of the renewable energy project, mostly privately developed, to be crowded in. So there's these criteria, and so far we have allocated funds to South Africa, the credit guarantee vehicle, to provide guarantee for a bundle of projects in South Africa. We're also giving similar funds to Uzbekistan, Tunisia, Mongolia, to provide guarantee for, and this is being discussed, for their 100 megawatt wind project, and the Dominican Republic as well. So a lot of countries have subscribed to this SRMI CTF program that we have put together. And because we are at 80% and maybe soon 100% taken, we are looking at doing a second batch to CTF. And this is being quite well received. And it allows for the team to reduce the transaction costs in accessing CIF individually, as long as they meet the criteria and we can demonstrate that their projects are progressing along and that CIF has additionality, as you know very well, Fred. And the last piece of this is also the use of both CTF and GCF for structuring risk mitigation instruments, as we've discussed on DRC, Ethiopia, and Gambia. So this is the three levels we've used climate funds, but it really helped to have all of our partners understanding our approach and vouch for it when it's appropriate.
Yeah, and if you look at the other side, which is the private sector side, to be honest, why we created SRMI 8 years ago was because the lack of bankable projects was staggering. Like, everybody wanted, especially 8 years ago, to put a lot of money on renewable projects, on solar projects. And everybody was like, oh, there isn't enough money. But there is a lot of money. Even today, there's still a lot of money. It's just which projects to give the money to. And this is where we come in. It is slow because by nature, developing a project is slow, an infrastructure project. But we've been helping fundraising on the DFI world, such as IFC, FMO, DG, etc., but also trying to push in, so mostly outside of the M300 countries, but in other countries, like such as in Indonesia, having other lenders, which are actually market-based lenders, to come in and also provide financing for those bankable projects. So the idea is developing a pipeline of projects which is sustained over the course of years, because they do multiple rounds to allow for the lenders, for the IPPs to understand that there are projects happening, and we really are pushing for any lenders that is affordable to come in And hence, we're as Huang said, we're not as broker in the sense that we're not necessarily only pushing for an IFC financing, we're also pushing for a lot of other lenders and DFI to provide funding for it.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. And then yeah, I wanted to ask about IFC, but you mentioned there are other let's say entities around that are also proposing advisory support. We will not expand on it, but definitely I wanted to just to mention that because some of them are really flyby, some others are more serious, and then the fact that SRMI we have a good track record, I think it's helping a lot. I think that we are getting close to the end. I don't know if there is other burning question or other point. Maybe Fanny, I will maybe ask you to say a few concluding remarks if you wish, and then we will close soon.
Yes, let me just say that I think this is a discussion that needs to be ongoing. We need to hear from you what we can do better at SRMI. Certainly, I think the discussion has highlighted there is a need for this kind of structured support. And we have always seen these bilateral deals, and they have really been such a burden for countries in all across sub-Saharan Africa, especially in the so-called emergency situation when HFO and diesel generator contracts get locked in. So let's move away from that, and where you need our help, do please let us know. We're ready.
Great, thanks for this, Fanny, and then very glad to see that of course sustainable energy access is one of the core things of M300, not only energy access but on a sustainable manner. So SRMI is a key has a key role to play, and on PCM, of course, on private capital mobilization. So thanks a lot, everyone. I would like to thank the team, and then we will certainly have other discussions on the SRMI and great results achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.